morning. For me, it's prior to the weekend, and an incredibly jam-packed week has occurred. For the first time, and I don't know how many of you are watching people on Zoom, and you see those little squares, and you don't know really who's behind those squares. Well, last Saturday, I found out who 25 of them were. It was amazing to see people in person. All of us vaccinated, all of us happy to be out, in spite of the sweltering weather here in New York. We took a tour through Spanish Harlem. We celebrated Gay Pride. And we ate and chatted like old times in amuse-bouche. It was wonderful, really wonderful. And yesterday, for the first time, Bryant Park was open to vaccinated and folks who had personal identification with them to show that they were who the vaccine said they were. We assembled at tables and chairs and listened to the New York Philharmonic under the stars. It was a brilliant evening, and the music was conducted by a young Spanish woman who did an amazing job on Stravinsky, and a new work by a young composer, 15 years old, called Rumor. And we all sat there mesmerized by the fact that we were alive. We were toasting to the return of culture to New York. And there were so many people there of all ages. We were spread out, and we had time tickets to enter the park. It was orderly. We had a ball. It was having your own private dinner party outside with no worries at all. So vaccines do that. And I understand there are still at least 10 states that are lagging behind and only have 30 some odd % vaccinated population. The three worst are Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. But there are some you wouldn't even expect, like West Virginia, South Carolina, Idaho, or maybe you would. But let's get on with the program, folks. In New York City, when tourists come to town, we're setting up pop-up vaccination sites for most of our scenic venue. And I think that's a good thing. I've had my vaccine since February, and I am so grateful to see real people, not just those little teeny squares that I assume are people at the other end, but I don't really know, and I can't hug them, and I can't break bread with them either. This was really phenomenal. And what's all our other news? Because there's plenty of news to talk about. Not as pleasant as being vaccinated and able to go outside, but there's a lot of news. We need those bills that Biden can pass through reconciliation, the child care money, the education money, the infrastructure bills. They can go right through reconciliation. This bipartisanship, it doesn't work. Not when you have people who were actively supporting an insurrection. They don't want to see this plan survive. They don't want to see economic relief for the country. That's why the founding fathers didn't even have two parties. They had one, the American Democratic and Republican Party, open to everyone, and you just chose who you wanted to be the next president. It wasn't until 1828 that the first party broke off, and then the second was later. So we don't need bipartisanship if it's going to stifle our productivity, our wages, and our lives, because that's what's really important. When they're thinking about revenue, you bet they ought to be looking at the ultra wealthy, because CEOs are making 274 times what their employees are making, while employees are making a paltry 1.9% increase in salary. Their salaries have gone up for the employer 274 times. And I understand that when we close the tax loopholes, we're not going to generate the trillions that we think. We'll generate maybe a couple of billion more. Meanwhile, while the ultra billionaires are paying maybe 18 billion into the IRS, we the people, those of us who can barely afford to survive, have coughed up $243 billion during the same time. There's no equality, folks. No equality between the classes at all. The lower and middle class are taxed. The upper class doesn't even get rid of their stocks. Just like they can purchase art at the Fed fund rates, they can pledge their stock and pay for it, also probably at the Fed fund rates. And so when they pass it on to their heirs, they deduct all that loan interest from the stock, and the stock goes to their heirs as an asset. Elizabeth Warren has a better idea. She proposed a 2% tax on everyone's assets over, say, a couple of $1 million. We're not looking at people with 20 million. You're looking at the $100 million class and up. You charge them 2%. Piketty says 5%. And then you're looking at $1 trillion, because the assets are traceable. What are they? They're homes, planes, boats, art, antiques, you name it. You put a tax on that, you're looking at real cash. The other way, couple of $1 billion, because even if we close the loopholes, the tax system really doesn't fairly tax the way the uber wealthy spend and then shelter their cash. So, and we need trillions to do the infrastructure bills and to do the child care, the education bills, and all the transportation that we need. We need trillions, not over 10 years, but we need the trillions now with a plan to spend them. If I had had my way, I would have taxed derivatives 6 cents on every $100 spent. I've been told by many in the financial markets that that's a terrible thing to do, but that would give us almost $1 trillion. Joseph Stiglitz thought it's a great idea, but also thought it might put derivatives out of business. When I asked him, he didn't think it was such a terrible idea to put them out of business. You can replace derivatives and bets with an insurance policy. So it's not like you're taking something away from them. You're not. I'd also raise revenue by increasing the payroll deduction. Why should it be at $118,000? or 124,000? You pay depending on your salary. After, say, you make $1 million, then you pay into payroll deduction. We'll never have to worry about Social Security then, or Medicare, or Medicaid, or a social safety net, because people who are making the big bucks will be paying into the system instead of taking out of the system. It's a great idea. I don't know why we're not implementing it. Are there other ideas for revenue? You bet. What you do is you don't let hedge funds defer their income for 10, 20 years and hide it in offshore accounts. No siree. All those fees that they take in, they should be taxed at regular income. Then we can share in the billion-dollar salaries that they make every single year. All right, might be only $12, $15 billion, but hey, every billion, I figured out, funds 22,000 people at 50,000 each. That would go a long way to increasing people's salaries all over America. So you got 4 ways to generate revenue, and there's a 5th one. Land developers, folks who are sitting on land where we've brought the subway to their door. They're making a lot of money because the subways are there. They should be taxed. Not a lot of money, but a small tax. If you're making billions, you can afford a tax of 5%. And then we could have real transportation in all of our little counties, and whether it's rural or suburban, and we could get to jobs easily. Remote work is fine, but I gotta tell you, when I saw all those people in person, it was a thrill. I didn't even recognize one of the women I had been seeing on Zoom for so many months. I think it's about 15. And all of a sudden, there she was, a real person. It's like magic for us in New York because we've taken the COVID virus extremely seriously. We did lose 28,000 people, and the vaccines are a godsend. As long as it's not like Logan's Run, and when I turn 80, I don't get a red button on me, hey, I'm good to go. And I'm happy to enjoy life. So let's all of us be vaccinated, grow old along with me, and let's provide a better life for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren. We don't want to be remote forever. We want to be able to hug people for real and have real relationships and real trust and real innovation. And one more thing, as the West and the Southwest are heating up and they're losing valuable resources, we're going to really have to think hard, scientifically, on how to stop the waste and how to use our resources effectively so that we're not producing pollution, pollutants, or any toxicity at this point in time. We can't afford to become a hot planet. None of us will survive. And the objective, of course, is to survive and thrive. Got to take those subsidies away from the fossil fuel industry and probably big agri. Unless they come up with a way to utilize assets that they have not thought of using before, It seems to me that's the only thing we can do. So there's lots of ways to generate revenue, folks. Lots of ways for us to do things better than we've done. And this is a beginning. Reconciliation for infrastructure and the Jobs Act. And let's do it now so that we really can celebrate July 4th and be happy. Take care, everyone, and thanks again for listening.